It's probably a good place to go to next, actually, is Everton. And obviously, they lost to Manchester United. I haven't prepared you for this, but let's talk
No,
about
it's all right.
Everton's slide as well. We touched on it last week, but they weren't very coherent in this game. And I know they create a lot of chances on paper statistically, but none of the chances ever feel like they're going to do anything. They don't feel like a clinical, well-versed attacking team. In fact, they seem like a bit of a hit and hope. And that feels like a throwback to the Sean Dyche Burnley days, doesn't it, in some ways? If you read Twitter and what the fans think about where Everton are at the minute, they feel the same. And I've got a lot of positives to say about Sean Dyche. He went through some difficult few months, I think, especially when he first took the job. But is there any progress there now, do you think? From a pretty talented team, there's a few players there that we've said arguably would do better elsewhere. Is he underperforming?
Yeah, we talked about this last week, didn't we? That actually there is some quality in this side, but it's so frustrating watching them because you say about them kind of hitting and hoping, like, and the stats looking like they had a lot of chances. A more clinical side does score from them, though, if we're honest. I don't think it's all 40-yard pop shots. Like, there are opportunities there where they should have been testing Onana far more than they did. I think they were really, really poor in that final third, and that last decision was just always lacking. And again, where's the coaching of your forward players then? What are we doing to kind of get them into a better frame of mind? Where are we looking at their movement? Where are we looking at how they convert those chances? Because Beto all of a sudden overnight hasn't become a terrible footballer. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, okay, has been wildly affected by injuries, but the one thing you'd expect a player not to lose is their clinical nature and their instinct. If you said Calvert-Lewin has lost a couple of yards of pace with the injuries he's had, I'd absolutely understand that. But instinct shouldn't go. But it seems to have left this whole squad. It's really worrying for them because they can't have games where they go to Old Trafford, have an equal share of possession and are creating chances, but come away with absolutely nothing. You can't afford to do that. Like, this was their chance to get something from it, and the naivety that they showed at the back even is not something you would normally associate with Sean Dyche. But the fact that United could get those two penalties and counter so freely, it just seems so obvious. That was all United were ever going to try and do, and they let them.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You talk about the naivety, and United had two penalties, which were the most definite penalties. Don't think anybody could argue that they shouldn't have been given. Alejandro Garnacho got himself into some good positions, but the challenges were so clumsy. And I think there's an argument United could have had more than two penalties in the first half alone, because Everton just weren't very composed at the back either. And what is that? Is that nerves? Is that just a lack of confidence? Because there's so many good players there with potential. And there's a lot of very experienced players who should know better as well, who aren't standing up and leading the team either. It's a difficult watch for Everton fans this season. I don't like watching them. They're not a very entertaining or likeable team in any way.
I wonder if their heads are gone. I wonder if everything that's happened off the pitch has affected them to the point where they feel like they're fighting a losing battle. And the annoying thing is, they're still not in the relegation zone, but they are sleepwalking their way into real trouble. They should have been able to pull away from this.
Yeah.
They have got better quality than they're showing. And actually, when Forest is like, their performances dropped and their results dropped, and when Luton kind of looked like they were turning some corners but not really getting wins over the line, and Brentford, like we mentioned earlier, I've been saying for a while, I could see them getting sucked into it. There are teams that Everton can climb above, and they're just it's frustrating. I'm not an Everton fan at all, but even I find it frustrating when you're watching football that it just feels pointless watching Everton play, because you know it's going to result in nothing.
I feel like if they'll get through this season, and if they survive relegation, they will get rid of Sean Dyche. If they get relegated, they've kind of got to stick with him in some ways to get them out of the division. But I do think that if they survive relegation, they've got to go in a different direction, because we're talking about the value of a coach with the right team. Gary O'Neill being case in point, not only for Wolves, but for Bournemouth last season, got a lot out of players that were, should have been performing better, weren't. He came in, steadied the ship, got them performing better. Eddie Howe at Newcastle last season especially, turned around a team that was struggling, a team of talented players. A different manager in charge of this Everton and these players, I think, could do so much better. They're a mid-table team at the very worst, aren't they?
Maybe, but to be honest, to give him a little bit of credit, I don't think it matters who's in charge of Everton while it's being run in the way that it is.
Fair point.
Because there's just no coherent plan. We've said that before. And actually, the closest thing they've had to a plan is to invest in Sean Dyche type players. So actually, if you took him out you're then talking about a squad rebuild, which they can't afford to do. We
No.
know there's financial implications on the squad. They're going to have to sell at least one asset in the summer. I imagine it'll be Onana. Yeah, it's bleak. That's the only way I can put it. I just think it's bleak.